Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, and it is time for another mailbag where I answer your hot takes, your observations, your questions, and ultimately your comments about tennis or anything else. Over 24 hours ago, I posted on the YouTube community tab. Decent week of comments, not as many as last week. I'm not going to go an hour this time. I know some of you will be disappointed about that. But I also got some comments from Apple Podcast reviews. A couple more than I got last week. So I will get to those most certainly, and I appreciate everybody who was able to leave your comments there. I also think that there is probably some interest in some coverage of the Alcaraz Ruusuvuori match in Madrid earlier this morning, which I did watch in its entirety. So before I get to the comments, I'm going to talk a little bit about Alcaraz Ruusuvuori. The funny thing about this match, and I think one of the reasons why it's so, intriguing in hindsight is because Alcaraz could have lost this match. He was smoked in the first set. Ruusuvuori won at 6-2. And in the second set, Alcaraz continued to look on his heels for the first half of the set. Ruusuvuori had break points at 2-3. Alcaraz serving at 2-3. Multiple break points. And it ended up being a tight second set before Alcaraz really ran away with the third. I think he won the third set 6-1 if my memory serves. But obviously, what's so glaring about how this match played out in the result is that here you have a guy in Emil Ruusuvuori who I think at this point has built a reputation, one, as a good young player. I think he's 21 or 22 at this point, so it's not like he's a teenager or anything, but a solid young player who has a really good chance to have an excellent career as potentially a top 30, if not a top 20 kind of player. I don't think that many people pin him as a top 10, a future top 10 guy. But if everything goes right, I think he even has that ability, right? So yes, that is part of his reputation. But I think the second part of his reputation is that he is Jannik Sinner mini-me, that he is Jannik Sinner light. And of course, Sinner being one of the rare guys, one of the few guys who has a head-to-head against Carlos Alcaraz that at this point is not a -1, 3-3. And at this point, one of the only two players who has defeated Carlos Alcaraz in 2023, Jannik Sinner, that is. Here comes his mini-me version, his doppelganger, if you will, who's up 6-2 and has Alcaraz on the ropes. So that immediately draws your attention. And I will say that a lot of things that Sinner has done to bother Alcaraz was certainly a big factor in Ruusuvuori's success early on in this match. The biggest thing, especially in the first set, was probably the aggressive return of serve. Ruusuvuori completely burying not only Alcaraz's second serve, but even his first serve to an extent, and hitting really hard returns from an aggressive return position off of both wings, generally just deep up the middle, and rushing Alcaraz's +1 to the point where not only was Carlitos not having a chance to start the point with a good aggressive and offensive +1 shot, but also was making a lot of errors on that first shot because he wasn't able to recover his footwork and his technique in time to, coming out of your service motion. Carlitos just looked rushed. He just looked rushed, especially on the forehand. It was an erratic forehand day through the first half of the match for Alcaraz, and I think, again, a lot of that was just how little time he had to set up that ball. The biggest revelation, I think, for Ruusuvuori was the serving. I've never seen him serve so big. He was averaging over 125 miles per hour. He was hitting spots. He was getting an unbelievable amount of unreturned serves in the first set as well. I mean, he did not have to work very hard on his serve at all. And that's been an area where I've wanted to see more from Ruusuvuori. One of my complaints about him, complaints is a weird term, but one of the areas where I think he's suffered is that he isn't an offensive player, but an offensive player who's lacked the ability to play as much offense as he would want because he's not bringing enough heat off of that serve. This was the best I've ever seen him serve. Madrid conditions rewarded that quite a bit as well. So a couple of adjustments for Alcaraz to turn the match around. One is, I think he moved back. I thought he moved back on the return of serve. In fact, Hawkeye confirmed he very, very, very much did move back on the return of serve. He went to the back fence to return both first and second serves to give himself more time and to get some returns in play. And the returns in play number skyrocketed in the second and the third set. And I think just his regulation rally position was also further back. And Ruusuvuori's forehand speeds went way down. He, wasn't able to continue to kind of execute the pace of shot and the consistency that he did through the first set and a half. So between Ruusuvuori's ball speed dropping, Alcaraz's court position going further back, that cocktail, that combination created an environment where suddenly Alcaraz just had a whole lot more time. And that time resulted in much cleaner tennis from Carlos Alcaraz, much more precise tennis from Alcaraz, and he was able to turn defense to offense on a pretty regular basis once he got his feet under him in this match. And the errors, like he was just missing less because he was not quite as rushed. Also, the energy in this match, I think the mental component. At 2-3, I mentioned that Ruusuvuori had a bunch of break points in that game. And I think when you are an underdog in a tennis match and you have that underdog mentality, you come out of the gates hot, and there's a feeling like, whoa, I'm playing great. This might be my day. This might be my day. I think this is my day. After that 2-3 game where Ruusuvuori had a bunch of break points, and I have to emphasize, Alcaraz was brilliant in these break points saved. He was so good saving these break points at 2-3. But after having all those chances and Alcaraz coming through and the crowd getting loud and Alcaraz pumping his fist, I think that was the moment where Ruusuvuori started to ponder. And I don't think he has that much mental swagger to him at this point. I think he did start to wonder at that point, is it my day? Maybe it's actually not my day. Because this whole time it's felt like my day. That 2-3 game, if you watched it, there was a total shift in the energy, and suddenly there was some hesitation and some doubt creeping in to Ruusuvuori. I think ultimately when you're on even footing psychologically, that kind of thing maybe wouldn't affect you. But I think for Ruusuvuori, who just has that underdog mentality almost in a bad way, it just felt like that 2-3 game kind of rocked him in a way where, I don't know, if he were actually Jannik Sinner and not mini-me Jannik Sinner, I don't think it would have been such a blow to the system to lose those break points in 2-3. Essentially what I'm saying is at the first time adversity came Emil Ruusuvuori's way, his level dipped, which is not really what you want to see, but it's also a reality of the situation, and it wasn't all that surprising. So Alcaraz breaks serve at 3-all the very next game, and from that point on, it's kind of all Carlitos. Alcaraz in the second set started to ask much more out of his first serve. In the first set, it wasn't all that aggressive. And he started to realize that he wasn't getting any +1 opportunity because Ruusuvuori was so aggressive on the return. And Carlitos certainly upped the ante and was like, if you're going to be aggressive on the return, I should get some free points out of this. And I think Alcaraz simply went for more on the first serve, and it helped him out. He got a lot of free points in the second set. He didn't in the first set. That was a really big key. Probably went a little bit bigger on the second serve, although that's the adjustment I was really looking for after the first set. After the first set, I was like, all right, Alcaraz has one double fault and his second serve is getting demolished. At that point, you got to be like, I'm going to go for more. And if I double fault a couple times, so be it, because anything is better than Ruusuvuori absolutely crushing my second serve like it's as big as a watermelon. Like he's seeing it as big as a watermelon, which is what was happening. So overall, Ruusuvuori definitely showed off his ball striking talent. Crazy power ground strokes in the first set. Once again, we saw that if you take a lot of time away and you're able to hit big off of both wings and rush Alcaraz off the return, some good things can happen. But I also think that given the circumstances, it's a win that Alcaraz should be really, really proud of. You change conditions, Barcelona to Madrid, first match. This is typical of a Masters 1000. Maybe not so much anymore now that it's a 96-player draw, but certainly when it was a 56-player draw, you're not really going to have a chance to ease into the match. You come to Madrid, unorthodox conditions, altitude, big hitter. Someone who's able to take advantage of that altitude by actually playing really, really fast. And I imagine the ball was coming way quicker than anything he saw in Barcelona. It was just coming quicker. And he had to make that adjustment with a lot of pressure. This tournament means a lot to him. It's Madrid. And I thought Alcaraz did really good problem solving in this match. And I imagine that if you're Juan Carlos Ferrero, you are more proud of this Alcaraz win today than you were of blowing out Stefanos Tsitsipas in the Barcelona final. Because in the Barcelona final, everything worked. Everything was perfect. There was no adversity. But in this one, he really did have to mentally dig deep, stay the course, make some adjustments. He even tossed his racket, which I don't think I've ever seen Alcaraz do that. He even tossed his racket in frustration. There was a lot of stress that he had to deal with and a lot of imperfect circumstances. Ruusuvuori also already having a win under his belt, and Alcaraz is still able to get through with a victory. The other thing that I thought of, and this is the last point, somebody asked in a mailbag recently, they said, Gill, should Alcaraz move back next time he plays center so that he simply has more time? And my response was, yeah, good idea. Good comment. Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, he kind of did that in this match. That was an adjustment that he made. And it really helped his forehand start to perform better. And also probably gave Ruusuvuori a little bit more to think about, less of a target. It felt like he just couldn't go deep middle and automatically rush Carlitos with ease, that it was going to need to take, a little bit more to kind of break the defenses. So I think that's a really good play for Alcaraz on clay. On grass, maybe it won't be an option, because it's so hard to defend on grass. But on clay with Alcaraz's physicality, yeah, he has everything he needs to take advantage of clay court tennis from a deep court position, which I think has a lot of benefits in itself, but he has the weight of shot to still be dangerous from way behind the baseline, to still generate offense and to kind of move up once the point is flipped in his favor. And he has the speed and the defensive skills to actually take advantage of that court positioning and have the willingness to defend a couple balls and the legs to work into points. So I thought that was the great adjustment that he made, not only on the return position, but it starts with the return position, and then it goes from there. Just playing from a little bit deeper to buy yourself some more time. I like it. But yeah, it's not going to be a solution at Wimbledon. So keep that in mind as well. All right, let's get to the comments. First one is from MDL Bull. Hi, Gill. I have a question regarding Coco Gauff's forehand. Instead of changing her extreme grip, which I feel like it's too late to do, what are other changes or tweaks she can make to her forehand wing in order to make it more reliable and potentially a strength? All right. Interesting question. I always hesitate to coach technique. I'm not trained to coach technique. And I really think that there are a bunch of people out there who are much better than me at this. So I always kind of bring that disclaimer before I talk about this thing. What strikes me with Gauff's forehand, though, is definitely her take back. Besides for her grip, her take back. It is so far out of the pocket. And if you're watching on YouTube, you kind of see my arm position. And then as soon as you see that, you kind of know what I'm talking about. Most forehands, most of the best forehands in the world, the elbow doesn't get all that far away from the body, and neither does the racket head. And everything is kind of contained in a more compact swing path, or even if you track the elbow or if you track the racket head, usually nothing drifts all that far away. But for Gauff, the take back feels very, very wild, very, very kind of out of her almost center of gravity. And I think that does certain things to the swing that make it difficult for her to have success in timing the ball and in potentially even getting the footwork right. But also, when you look at Gauff's forehand, I think there is a considerable difference between its performance when she has plenty of time versus when she doesn't. And it's definitely a forehand that is susceptible to being rushed. And obviously, I think if the take back were a little bit more compact, she wouldn't be rushed quite as easily. So that is what I see when I look at Gauff's forehand. Besides the grip, which is extreme, I feel the take back is also extreme. It's way out there. Next one is from Donald Trump Forever. Great. Thank you for the kind words at the top. I'm a Djokovic fan, but I think his backhand is no longer the best or even top 3 in the world. He seems to be second best in backhand rallies versus Medvedev and Zverev. His backhand also now struggles versus Nadal on clay, just like everyone else. My question is, do you agree with this analysis? And if so, what can Djokovic do to counteract this? I don't know that Djokovic's backhand performance has really gone downhill in any way. So I don't know that I fully agree with it. But I think that if you're observing that Novak is not so dominant against Medvedev and Zverev in the backhand and backhand exchange, I think what you're really seeing there is a decline in physicality. It's probably what you're really seeing. I mean, part of what makes Novak's backhand so great is, yes, it has moments of brilliant offensive creation, but that was never really what it was about. It's about the return. It's about the defense. It's about the precision trading, the depth on the trading, the precision on the backhand down the line that puts so much pressure and puts opponents on the move. But ultimately, it's still with Novak's baseline game. It's a combination of, I guess, death by 1,000 paper cuts, where the forehand and the backhand are both applying a requisite amount of pressure, where ultimately or eventually the player who's being attacked by Novak Djokovic is going to fold in some kind of way. Sometimes I feel like Novak and Murray were kind of the kings of the forced error in a way. But I do think what's been a change as Djokovic's career has progressed is probably a little bit more reliance on the forehand to be a weapon and less reliance on the backhand, to go backhand to backhand with the righty and to have that physicality edge, to therefore utilize that brilliant consistency, that brilliant depth, that brilliant precision that Djokovic has on the backhand. But I think more and more, Zverev and Medvedev, they can go toe-to-toe in that cross court. And Djokovic at this point in his career, I don't think he wants to be like, yeah, I'm just going to outlast you here. That's just no longer a good plan for Djokovic. So maybe there have been instances where he's bailed out too often with the backhand drop shot, or there have been instances where he's been suffering physically and actually been on the worse end of the backhand to backhand exchange. If you're going to look at a match like, I don't know, the 2021 US Open final against Medvedev, where Djokovic certainly didn't have a handle on the backhand to backhand. But I don't think it's the backhand itself that's declined. I think it's, what are Djokovic's attributes and what are the way that he wins? And is the backhand no longer as big a part of that plan? And that might be true. Let us go to the next one. It is from Howell, aka Donut McMuffin. The usernames on Apple Podcasts go many different directions. I'll tell you that. Many different directions. All right. Thanks again for everything you say here at the top. My question is not tennis related. Which major American sports pundits do you enjoy listening to and why? Parentheses, Stephen A., Colin Cowherd, Skip Bayless, Nick Wright. Maybe tell us which ones you think you don't like as much if you're feeling spicy. All right. If you have no interest or don't know who any of these people are, then you can skip this part. Honestly, none of the pundits that you're listing in the parentheses I enjoy at this point. Now, I think many of them are very, very talented, very, very good at what they do. Nick Wright, actually, recently, I've actually really appreciated some of the stuff that he has done. But I think all of them are talented, and I have a good amount of respect, a little bit less respect for Skip, who I don't think is actually believes a lot of the stuff that he's saying. And I think he's a provocateur and a hot take artist, even more so than the others. But all of them are talented. I respect what all of them do, but they are not my cup of tea anymore. Because I think that in the modern media landscape, the role and the position that they try to occupy, which is, oh, I am an expert on everything, I no longer think that that is the best option for a consumer. Or at least it's no longer the option that I choose to focus on. For example, I'll bring this back to tennis. If Djokovic and I'll go in past tense. When Djokovic and Federer played at Wimbledon in 2019, that was probably big enough for, First Take or Colin Cowherd. That might have been a big enough match to actually get some airtime on some of those American television radio shows or television programming, debate shows, where normally tennis would be ignored on that kind of program. But I mean, when something that big happens, it was probably debated. And guess what? If any of you watch that, you're probably going to pull your hair out. It's not going to be smart analysis or even smart discussion about tennis compared to, what I can do, because I am a specialist. I occupy a niche and they don't. Well, that is true for baseball, basketball, hockey, football, boxing, MMA. Those guys, Stephen A. Cowherd, Skip, Nick Wright, they are attempting to be an expert at everything, and it's just not realistic. So I choose to go to more niche programming, for my information. So like right now, NBA playoffs, I enjoy the work of Ryan Russillo on the Ringer Podcast Network, Bill Simmons as well, who brings on a lot of great guests. I mean, what Simmons does on his podcast, he has his opinions, but he brings on guys like Benjamin Solak for football, or, Russillo brings on someone like, I'm blanking on the guy, like Trent Dilfer for football, right? Like they're bringing on experts, and they are, I think, basketball. Like Russillo watches as much basketball as I watch tennis. All right, that's just an example. I mean, I could go on and talk about other things that I consume, but I think you get the point. That's kind of my opinion on the major American sports pundits. But, Nick Wright, Stephen A., Cowherd, all excellent at what they do. Man, they are talented. And I, at a time, looked up to them and learned a lot from them. And at a time, kind of wanted to be them, actually. All right, next one is from Miss Coach Taylor. Gill, what are the 10 best forehand, 10 best backhands, 10 best movement guys in the top 50? All right, I would recommend, first of all, watch the Hulk video. Or I did post it on podcast platforms, so even if you're a listener, listen to the Hulk podcast, because I get these things all the time, and honestly, I don't have these things at the off the top of my head, but that's an example of where I did put a lot of thought into it, and you'll get some of the answers to these questions in a way that I think is a little bit better than simply ranking the guys. But what I will do is I'll read what you have and I'll give you my opinion on it. So you have for forehand 1 Rafa, 2 Stefanos, 3 Joker, 4 Ruud, 5 Alcaraz, 6 Rublev, 7 Matteo, 8 Norrie, 9 Sinner, 10 FAA. Well, I think you did a pretty good job here. I would say my most glaring disagreement is Matteo is too low. Matteo has, I think, a better forehand than probably Alcaraz, Ruud. Well, look, his mobility kind of gets in the way here. So now I'm thinking, like, are we talking also about when you have to, like, run into your forehand corner and hit one? Because then obviously Matteo suffers a little bit. But if we're talking about offensive forehands, yeah, I mean, I think he's better than everyone you have here except maybe Rafa and Stefanos. Berrettini's that good. It's just, I think once you incorporate some of the other parts of hitting a forehand, especially hitting a forehand on the run, then I could understand why you get to Matteo at number 7. Let me pull up the rankings real quick, just because sometimes that gives me a good way just to scan a little bit and see if we're missing anybody. Did you snub Fritz? Yeah, I think you snubbed Fritz. I think Fritz's forehand is a little bit better than Norrie's forehand. You have Norrie on here. And I think Fritz's forehand is definitely better than FAA's forehand as well. Much more consistent. So yeah, I think Taylor should be on there. Let's see. Anything else? I don't think so. Look how many of the best forehands in the world are the best players in the world. Notice that? I mean, it's pretty good. If there's one player who has a top 10 forehand in the world who maybe should be on here, but whose play doesn't quite allow him to maybe be mentioned in these conversations as much, some of you probably know who I'm going to say. It's Francisco Cerundolo. All right, let's look at your backhands list. For backhands, you have Joker, Zverev, Daniil, Kyrgios, Sinner, Rafa, Rune, Fritz, Hurkacz, and Rune again. Rune twice. How about that? By the way, speaking of Rune, last match right now in Madrid, it's 6-all in the third set tiebreak. Rune against Bublik. This is intense stuff. I'm literally watching it 6-all. Great forehand down the line by Rune. And he's going to have, I think, what is at least his second match point. This is very intense. I feel like Cam Williams here. Live commentary. Okay. This is a good list of backhands. I personally think that Daniil's is the best in the world. I've always had kind of tied with Djokovic. Novak is a little bit better at creating offense with it, but I definitely think it's better than Zverev's because it's trickier than Zverev's. But it's close. I'm not gonna say it's way off, but for me, with the flat delivery, I think it's more consistent than Zverev's. I think it's harder to attack than Zverev's, and I do think it has that trickiness factor with the low bounce and just the flat delivery. So Kyrgios is an interesting placement. I don't think a lot of people would have him up there, but I won't really argue with it. I like how high you have Rafa. There's actually a mailbag question later about that. I like how high you have Rune. I do think Hurkacz deserves to be there. So yeah, I mean, I think you really know your stuff. Honestly, I think this is very good. Now you don't have Alcaraz there. I'm fine with that right now. I could see an argument that Alcaraz should be there, but I'm totally fine with him not being there, honestly. Coric isn't there. I can understand that, but he would warrant some consideration, certainly. Korda isn't there. Maybe Korda should be there, but again, let me go back to the end of your list. You have Hurkacz, you have double Rune, so maybe Korda should be in that number 10 spot. In fact, I think he should. I'd put him there. All right. And then you movement list. I'm not going to do a movement list, but good one. Okay, another one from Apple Podcasts. So for the review part, I'm not going to read that part, but I appreciate it. You're the best. Oh, this one, another strange shingles 27. Really? You named yourself after like I don't know what to call it, a disease? Or maybe shingles is also a last name. It might also be a last name, but it's also a disease. So, I mean, I shouldn't be talking. My last name's Gross. So if it is your last name, don't take offense. All right. Wow. It's 9-8. 9-8 in the tiebreak for Runa. Okay. As for my mailbag question, I guess it's more of a hot take that I'm wondering if you agree with. Nadal's backhand is top 10 of all time, at least among two-handers. And when he's healthy, it's easily top 5 in the current game. I think it's criminally underrated and very rarely breaks down. Plus, he hits the cross-court backhand really hard when he wants to. You're right. He does. And I know exactly the backhand you're talking about with the cross-court backhand. 9-all. Service winner, Bublik. Look, here's the thing about Rafa's backhand. Or here's the thing about having these conversations overall. A lot to do with it is how big a part of a shot is to your success. How integral is a shot? Some people pronounce that word integral. I go integral. How important is it? How crucial is it to your success? Or if you are going to make a pie chart, how big a slice of pie is that particular shot? So, for Rafa, the forehand, when it comes to the baseline game, is asked to do so much more than what the backhand is asked to do that it's hard to say, especially when Rafa was younger and he really didn't always, try to do all that much with the backhand offensively. It's hard to know, well, how do we assess that shot? But look, you're right about this. It is so reliable. When Nadal has his low points, it is very rarely the reason. It's usually the forehand that's dipped. It's, the backhand is rock solid. I think the variety on the backhand is very underrated. I think he has a slice that works really well. Aesthetically, it's not the most pleasing slice to look at, but I think it works really well. And I think he mixes his heights and his spins and his directions unbelievably well on the backhand side. It is, as we know, very, very consistent. But ultimately, I do think it's hard to put it up there, top 10 of all time. I think it might be in there, but I also think that if I really went through it, I might be able to come up with 10 backhands, or, a Steve Flink might be able to come up with 10 backhands that are better. And just as importantly, 10 backhands that are just more important to winning, because Nadal's backhand has never really been in the, among the items of his game that have been most leaned on. And that hurts it in this kind of conversation. But is it criminally underrated? I can't really disagree with you there. It is a gem of a backhand. It is such a good backhand. It really is. It's an interesting thing to think about. Runa wins. Big serve. Bublik double faulted there at 9-all. So, it kind of goes back to this interesting thing. I mean, Madrid, I believe the roof is even close. So it's indoor tennis. It should be easier to hit, 2 first serves. But look, I just don't know if someone's got to run the numbers and the analytics on Bublik's second serve. But I don't know if he finds the balance, if he gets it, right. Now, obviously, he was really close to winning that match, which is a good sign for Bublik. But to me, it's still kind of a tough pill to swallow, because oftentimes with Bublik, when he misses his first serve, you don't really trust him to make the second serve. You don't. And I don't know if the payoff is there, because ultimately, that's a tight tie break. And what does it come down to? Runa doesn't need to do anything to get that crucial mini break at 9-all. Then he gets the service winner at 10-9 to win the match. I don't know. Let's see what the stats were. Let's see what the second serve stats were for Bublik. He double faulted 9 times in the match. Could be worse for a 3-set match for Bublik. Could be worse. But second serve points won. He was at 43%. Runa was at 52%. all right, look, 43% isn't good at all, really. But then, you look at Bublik's baseline game against Rune's baseline game. You could understand why Bublik might struggle to win second serve points. At the same time, I kind of think it proves my point. Let's see what he averaged on second serve speed. He averaged, this is broken. Wow, the radar gun must be broken because it says that he's averaging 82 miles per hour on the first and 68 miles per hour on the second. That is 100% wrong, right? Can't be right. So, all right, that's that. Enough on Bublik. Let's go to the next comment. The next comment is from Hank J. All right. Thanks for the kind words there. I have a question about some things Reilly Opelka has been posting on his Instagram in regards to ATP doubles. I think he posted saying that doubles should be removed from the ATP, posting about low attendance, lots of walkovers from singles players, no attention, etc. I love doubles, and I think it will always have a place in tennis because of how many people will play doubles recreationally, and it is just as much a part of the sport as singles. But that doesn't translate to the TV at all. What do you make of Opelka's comments, and is there more that can be done to help professional doubles? Okay. I kind of agree with what you're saying, first of all, about the prominence of doubles to the sport of tennis recreationally, and how, keeping that in mind, it would feel like a hole. It would feel like a gaping hole if professional doubles didn't exist on tour. It would feel like something, there would be incompleteness, like something's missing. Because at the end of the day, when you boil it down to kind of what we do here, you take away all of the fans, the money, the sponsors, the television product, the ticket sales, all of the ways that this is, a capitalistic entity. If you take that all away, what we're doing is we're taking a game that everybody around the world plays and creating an arena where the best in the world can compete. And to just not have doubles be a part of it wouldn't feel right at all. So I almost think it's intrinsically a part of tennis. I also think that it is a big part of the live tennis experience. Despite doubles not bringing a lot to the table in terms of ticket sales and television, I do feel that if you walk around the grounds, opening week of a major, even the first week of a Masters 1000 tournament, you will see countless people who are very much enjoying the ability. Many of these people are probably people who play a lot of doubles themselves. They're very much enjoying the chance to watch professional doubles up close on outer courts. So, and also part of the uniqueness of going to a live tennis event and why I tell people in my personal life, I don't care if you like tennis. If you don't like tennis, you should go to the US Open. You should go to your local tournament, whatever that tournament is because this a la carte experience of being able to go around and to see, whatever match you may want to see at any given moment, and oftentimes rub shoulders with these athletes is completely unique to tennis. You will not find it in another sport, period. And the volume is a part of that. The volume meaning the number of matches that a tennis tournament puts on. Part of that volume is doubles. Okay, it's a really long way of saying doubles is a big part of the live experience, in my opinion. The second part of this question is, what can be done to help professional doubles? Well, first of all, I want to go in one direction that's actually topical. The topical direction is, I wonder if the lengthening of these Masters 1000 tournaments will indeed improve the participation by singles players in doubles. It's a phenomenon that we have seen at Indian Wells and Miami. Miami a little bit less so. Indian Wells partially because, think about it, if you are a European player and you lose early at Indian Wells, what are you doing for a week and a half? Like, seriously, it comes down to that. Like, what are you doing with your time? That's why a lot of players go play the Phoenix Challenger. Because if you're not doing that, you are kind of twiddling your thumbs in the United States. You're not going to go fly home back to Europe if you live in Monte Carlo like half the tour. You're not going to go fly back to Europe. So what are you doing? And that's why they play doubles. Part of the reason why they play doubles. Well, is that going to be true for more players as the format of these Masters 1000s are expanded and lengthened? I do think we might see a little bit more doubles participation by the singles players. And you still do have that in the women's game already. You know, Gauff and Pegula are big draws. I don't think that the men's side has an equivalent of that. You know, Krejcikova, Siniakova, I don't think they're, you know, really a huge draw, but even Kudermetova and Elise Mertens, there are a lot of more prominent singles players that have been participating in the doubles. But really, Gauff and Pegula are the only needle movers. They're really the only needle movers in doubles right now that play consistently. You know, ultimately, it is a chicken versus the egg thing. I don't think doubles is a bad product. I do think that if you put it on TV more, if you put it on center court more, the reaction would be pretty good for the most part, as long as you have some names. And you have to just do some star building. And I think star building will mostly, you know, it's going to be hard to star build from doubles alone. It will be. So I don't have all the answers here. But that's kind of my assessment of it. I don't know if I'm missing any aspects, if there are any angles that I haven't attacked here. But I think I'm kind of out of things to say. So I'm going to move on. Let's track it. Something to track. Next one is from The Pope. Again, appreciate the super positive words there at the top. Thank you. A question. Could you please share with us what you know about string tension used by the pros? Is it true that Mannarino has his racket strung somewhere in the mid-20s? Yeah, that is true. I think Mannarino is, I think he's been stringing his racket at like 27, 28 pounds, which is, absolutely mind-boggling. So, I saw this question. I hit up my friend Nate Walrath, who works for Tennis Point. Tennis Point is a tennis online retailer, clothes, rackets, strings, all that. Nate was at Cincinnati, I believe, was the tournament, or maybe Washington, D.C. He was at a tournament, and he was out back by where the stringers were, and there was a whiteboard. I'm sorry, it was Atlanta. Yes, it was Atlanta. He was by where the stringers were, and there was a whiteboard with all the players, their rackets, their strings, and their tension. The stringer had that up on a whiteboard. And Nate took a photo. He posted it on social media. I asked him to send it to me, so he did. And I'll put it up here on the screen right now, which you can enjoy if you're watching on YouTube. But the main takeaway here is how many different ways there are to skin the cat. I hate that saying. I'm not going to use that. It's such a gross saying. Okay, let's think of a new analogy. How many ways there are to cut the mustard? I don't know. I don't have anything else. Look, you have John Isner at the lightest, 35 pounds. You have John Millman at the heaviest, 66 pounds. If I were to kind of just scan and say, like, what's the average? I mean, most of the tour at this point is going with full polyester string bed and stringing between 45 pounds and 55 pounds. I think that's fair to say. You have some, you have a good amount of players using hybrid as well, but a lot of full polys. A lot of guys between 45 and 55. But, there's by no means like the best setup, the ultimate setup, because otherwise you'd see more players doing the same thing. You also see an abundance of a couple of strings, Luxilon, Alu Power, lots of RPM, tons of RPM, lots of VS versus. I'm not actually all that familiar with that one. 4G, I've seen a couple times. Yeah. You want to know my setup? I use a Babolat Pure Strike. I use a full bed of Luxilon Alu Power, and I string between usually 48 and 50. All right. Let's go to the YouTube comments. I think I am going to go an hour. How about that? I didn't think I would. All right, this one's from Marco B. Thoughts on Nadal seeding at the French Open if he does decide to play? At the moment, he is 14 and could potentially drop out of the top 16 if he doesn't play Rome. And if those behind him have good results at Madrid/Rome. This could mean third round meetings with Djokovic or Alcaraz come the French Open. Because of this, do you think that there should be a seeding formula at the French like there is at Wimbledon, where previous results on clay and the French are weighted heavily or more heavily on seedings? Also wanted to get your position on moving back to a 16 seed system. Good question. No, I would be against Roland Garros implementing something that Wimbledon had. Remember, they had it. They got rid of it. I'm using the past tense here. But for Wimbledon, I believe a big part of the logic for why the All England Club believed that special seeding system was necessary was because such a small portion of a player's ranking had to do with their results on grass. That was a big part of the logic, was that, look, if you're only going to let us if you're basically going to have no grass court season, and there was a time where I think the grass court season was even less so than what it is now. So if you're basically going to have no grass court season, then you need to give us a little bit of leeway here to make the seedings a little bit more accurate towards what grass court tennis would be. But when we're talking about clay, and look, is it as influential on rankings as hard court? No, it's not. But it's still, there's quite a bit of influence in a given player's ranking based on how well they played on clay. And I think when in doubt in the sport of tennis, we go with objectivity, as much kind of, and I know that there was a formula there, but still the formula itself, the algorithm itself has some subjectivity to it. And I think the more we can kind of simplify and systemize, the better we are in tennis for the most part. It just makes everybody's life easier. So I just don't itch at all for, the French Open to adjust the seeding. And, when it comes to Nadal dropping out of the top 16, it's a reflection on his results in the past 52 weeks. That's what it is. And that's okay. I think that's okay. What would be your position on moving back to a 16 seed system? I just think it's better. I think it's better for the fans. It's more entertaining. You get better first, second, third round matchups. And I think if you're a top 16 seed, particularly if you're a favorite to win the tournament, then there should be nobody outside of the top 16 that should rob you of your ability to go deep. So I much prefer 16 seeds over 32. I don't feel the need to elaborate on that further than I just did. I just think it's more entertaining. And I want a tournament to carry from start to finish. And what is there? Is there some kind of concern that if there were a 16 seed system that we would get so many upsets early on that at the end we would get underwhelming semifinals and finals and quarterfinals? Is that the logic? I gravely disagree with that. I don't think that's accurate. So, I don't really get it. I understand that the players in power probably like that a lot, but I don't think it does anything for the fans. Next one is from Zach Miles. Hi, Gil. With Emma Raducanu dropping out of Madrid and her recent string of injuries, what is your take on her future? There seems to be a lot of I think you stumped me on this word. Schadenfreude? Charade? That's not how to spell charade, is it? No, I don't think so. But now that I think about it, if I had to spell charade, I'm not sure how I would spell it. Anyway, there seems to be a lot of something type hate on her. Would also love to get your views on where this hate comes from. Calling her a one-hit wonder, a fluke, too fragile to manage the physical demands of the tour. Yet, when she won the U.S. Open, people said she was the real deal and even compared her to Roger Federer. Do you think the reality is... I cut off the question. I'm sorry. Basically, what do you think the reality is? Or here, I'm gonna pull up the question. Do you think the reality is somewhere in between these two extreme positions? Yeah, probably. I mean, when in doubt with the internet, the answer is in the middle. When in doubt. But yeah, definitely. Look, anybody who was saying, she's gonna tear it up after the US Open run, they don't understand sample size. And like, I'm not going to have some kind of I told you so attitude about it. Like, I knew exactly how things were going to go after the US Open. I didn't. Look, the reality is of the US Open run, that is one of the wildest things that has ever happened in the history of our sport, and therefore in the history of sports. It is one of the wildest things that's ever happened. So to know exactly what that means in the moment, to have takeaways, to be able to project the future based off one of the wildest things that's ever happened in history is pretty unrealistic. Where does the hate come from? The hate comes from her being rich and famous. That's where the hate comes from. She got rich and famous. And she continues to get a lot of attention. She continues to be treated like the celebrity that she now is. And I think that is where internet folk can resent her. That's the only thing that I can think of. Because, we all know she didn't do anything to anybody. She didn't kill your puppy. She didn't rob your house. She didn't spit in your soup. So all these people, giving her vitriol in comments, which I've seen as well. I've seen it on Instagram. I've seen it on Twitter. Under any Raducanu has withdrawn post comes a lot of venom. Where does that come from? My best assessment, jealousy. She got rich and famous. People don't like that because there's a perception that it's undeserved. But is it really undeserved? Or is it someone who pulled off one of the most miraculous things in the history of sports, and we're going to act like it's a mystery why she now has a sponsorship with, take your pick. I mean, what Raducanu has like an unbelievable portfolio now of brand ambassadorship. I don't know, British Airways. Let's see. Is there like, I'm going to pull up her Wikipedia. What is she? Endorsements. Here we go. I knew that there would be a section for this. Let's see. Okay, Tiffany & Co., Dior, British Airways, Evian, Porsche. So yeah, lots of good checks coming in the mail for Raducanu in the endorsement category. Look, she has a super interesting background. Her look is marketable. I mean, yeah, she's going to become a star when she wins the US Open without dropping a set as a teenager outside of the top 100 qualifier. Yeah, you're going to become rich and famous. You're from the UK. You're from a huge market. Let's not act like that doesn't have something to do with it. You're going to become rich and famous. Deal with it. But, people on the internet get mad when people get rich and famous. I think that's kind of the trend. All right, that's that. Let's see. Do I do a couple more? I got to do two more. Because I got to do the top liked comment on YouTube, and I'll do this one first. This one is from Golland. Can you explain or describe the decision-making process of how ATP players choose tournaments? I guess this question could be about WTA players as well. For example, why do some choose Munich and others Barcelona and others Banja Luka? Or early on, why do some choose the Golden Swing and others Europe? Do they chase specific surfaces, look to avoid certain players, want to stay close to their home country? I feel like I would go wherever I had the best chance to get sunshine and warmth, but I'd wager there is more to the decision-making tactics than just nice weather. Yeah, you left something out here. If you're a top player, you're getting appearance fees. Tournament directors are throwing money at you so that you can play their event. So that's a big deal. That's a big part of it. Not so much for the lower ranked players. They're not getting appearance fees. But the top guys are going to be accepting, big time cash to play these tournaments. Other than that, I would say it's where can you win? Where can you win? And what makes sense for travel schedule. So you want to avoid jet lag. You want to avoid, transcontinental travel. You want to make it as easy on yourself as possible from that standpoint. And when it comes to, where can you win? Let me be a little bit more specific on that. That's really where surface comes into play more than anything. Because at the end of the day, you got to maintain your ranking. You have to maintain your ranking. Your ranking is your livelihood on tour. That is what gets you into the majors. That is what gets you into the Masters. So as long as you're maintaining your ranking, you're in good shape. And to do that, you got to win. So if you look at the players who play the Golden Swing, those are the players who are going to probably not win in Rotterdam, but they're probably going to be able to win in Rio. That's the difference. All right, last one. It is from Jared. This was the top liked comment. Hey, Gill, give me your top 5 players on tour that are currently underachieving based on their talent level and why you choose them. Well, I'm going to ignore the Billie Jean King quote, which is, hard work is talent. Great quote by BJK. But I guess when you ask this question, you're basically saying, who are the players who have the both physical and technical, genetic capabilities that are extraordinary, and their results are a lot more ordinary. Okay. Names that come to mind. Alexander Bublik, just a guy who I think can be more locked in mentally and just give a little bit more effort. Denis Shapovalov, someone who's really struggled to improve on his weaknesses, which has just, made it so that his unbelievable athleticism and his phenomenal strengths on the tennis court have not been showcased at the highest level at all times. So, and Shapovalov also emotionally and his ability to manage a match has also been a weak point. Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, to this point, I do think deserves to be in this conversation. Not someone who I think is usually brought up in this conversation, but it is someone to me who I believe should be doing better. That said, I think maybe we're starting to see some turnaround for him. But I think physically and with his racket talent, and the natural power, I feel like the sky's the limit for him, and he hasn't been able to really fulfill that yet. Who else? In a way, a player who has frustrated me, I'm not going to lie, is Hubert Hurkacz. Another guy who, and again, I don't think he would come up on most of these guys' list, but when there is one thing that is so glaring that is holding you back and you're just not able to improve it, year after year after year, it just doesn't improve at all. That to me has been frustrating as someone who just roots for him to continue to progress. That's been frustrating for me. And then the last guy I actually think would be Alexander Zverev. Look, he's accomplished so much. He's accomplished more than 99% of players will ever be able to accomplish. But if you're going to tell me that his nerve management, his, rocky situations off the court, which sometimes have seemingly affected his tennis, sometimes seemingly not, but at times it seemed to bother him. Honestly, the stuff with his coaches and his agent seemed to have always bothered him a lot more than the issues that he's had in his romantic relationships. Because, I'll just leave it at that. Not to mention, the second serve, which there haven't been any adjustments on. It just seems like he hasn't really tried very hard to fix it. All those things considered, it does feel like Zverev has left some meat on the bone, some untapped potential. Yeah. It's especially in the nerve management department, because he's a lot worse than his contemporaries in that area. There's a clear difference between how he's been able to play when there's no pressure versus how he's been able to play when there's pressure. So, all right, I gave you 5 guys. Always a question that I feel slightly bad answering, but I understand why there's interest in getting my take on that. All right, everybody. I am actually going to be away this weekend, so expect Monday Match Analysis to drop a little bit later than usual this week, and there's not going to be any post-match analysis in the next couple days. Just giving you the heads up, but as Madrid rolls on, I will get some post-match stuff in during the week. Hope you next week, that is. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.